Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's live training and QA session dedicated to the topic of how to master automation with PractiTest. For those of you who might be new to the company, I wanted to take just a brief moment to introduce you to the company, a little bit about who we are and what we do, and then Antony will take over today's session. So, for those who might not know, PractiTest was founded in 2008 as the first fully SaaS-based test management platform. At the time, most of our competitors were primarily on-prem with multiple siloed systems. Today, as testing has evolved, we've also evolved alongside it by supporting both manual and automated testing, and now including AI features to help you automate time-consuming manual tasks and take the guesswork out of your testing. We're trusted by global leaders across the spectrum of business sectors, from retail to education, finance, government, healthcare, gaming, and many more. We're also an established leader. Our customers rely on PractiTest technology to help them deliver quality software faster and meet the growing demand for digital services. Ours is a user-friendly platform. We put a lot of thought and planning into making sure it has the most user-friendly features on the market. And of course, in addition, it includes industry standard privacy and security protocols to protect your data. Our customers really love us. They give us consistently positive feedback every year, everything from high ROI to quick implementation and onboarding, best-in-class support, and many more. So thank you for that positive feedback. I also wanted to let you know we have another live training session on October 11th. It will be focused on making the most out of PractiTest workflows and giving you the most value with PractiTest. So please join us for that. Just a quick overview of what you can expect on today's agenda. Antony is going to deep dive into PractiTest's approach on integrating with multiple automation tools and helping you choose the right options for you and your software project needs. He'll go over codeless or coded options for automation and how to import and support BDD testing. At any time, if you have any questions or you want to focus on a particular area within automation, please feel free to ask any questions. Give us any feedback as well. If there's a particular topic you'd like covered more, let us know. We're always happy to tailor our sessions based on what you would like to learn. So that's it from me. Antony, please go ahead with today's session and enjoy.
Okay, hello everyone. There's a lot to cover and I'm going to try and get through it all in as sensible a manner as possible. Please feel free during the course of the session to divert it, ask questions. You can either write in the chat window or in the Q&A section, and I'll try and stop and we can promote you onto the panel so that you can ask your question personally and try and answer it in a personalized and a specific way to help you in your own particular use case. So let's talk a bit about automation with PractiTest. And before we actually talk about the particular methods that we have of automation and the tools that we can use to do automation, let's talk about the approach a little bit. And that is that we try to make sure that we have the ability to integrate and to work with as many different tools as possible. And sometimes it turns out that less is actually more. So we don't go in and say, well, we're going to integrate with 3 particular tools and we're going to build custom-built integrations for those particular tools for a number of reasons. Firstly, that we want to give people the ability to use as many different tools as possible. It's not our policy to go and say, well, you should choose Cypress for your automation or Selenium or Jenkins and choose particular tools. We want to be able to cater to whatever you're already using and not to influence your choice of tools. Because in many cases, in fact, in all cases, your choice of tools will be what is best for you. And so we don't want to influence you and say, well, you need to change over to a tool because we integrate with it. We want it to be as agnostic as possible and to allow you to use any tools which you want. We also want to make sure that you have the best quality integrations possible as well. So if we were to build a custom built integration, let's say for Source Labs, and we were to exclude most other tools, and we were able to have one or two other integrations as well, our specific custom built integration would be limited. We'd have to think of our use cases, imagine what you might want to do, and then say, well, we're going to do an integration which allows you to do X, Y, and Z. And then you come along to me and say, but we want to do A, B, and C either instead or as well as X, Y, and Z. So we have to go and redesign the tool to be able to do that. But then somebody else wants H, J, and K. And so we get into a position where by building custom integrations, not only do we limit you in your tools, which you choose, but we also limit you in the use of those tools as well, because we can't possibly think of every possible use case. And therefore, we're going to limit the abilities to be able to use your tools to the best of your use cases and in your own best practices. So what we do is we go instead in three particular directions. We have built three integration methods, which we have tried to make as widespread as possible and able to use as in many cases as possible as well. And those three use cases, which we're going to talk about tonight, those three tools, are firstly our REST API. And our API is a very powerful API. It has a tremendous number of calls in it. And you'll see as we look through some of the options that you have, that you can do virtually anything with the API, and it gives you the full flexibility to do whatever you want. We also have a tool called Firecracker, and that's a proprietary XML parser. And as I said before, it does limit it because Firecracker is built to work with Surefire and particularly JUnit type XML files. And so if you have a totally different type of XML file, it's obviously not going to work with it. But most automation frameworks can produce reports in XML format, which will comply with the Surefire XML format. And so you can use that also as a method of integrating. And again, it's much more widespread than a single tool because all you need is a tool that can produce an XML format document. And our third method, which goes in a different direction, is xBot. An xBot is a small executable client which allows you to take executable automations and run them within PractiTest. While both the API and Firecracker work on the basis of, well, you use your automation framework, and then the results come into PractiTest using the tools to pull them in, and you use your reports and your results to come into PractiTest. The xBot actually allows you to fire off the automation itself from within PractiTest. It's a small tool and it's relatively limited in what it can do, in that you need to have executable files, but there are use cases where it becomes particularly useful, and I'll give a little demo of using xBot as well. Also to note that all of these tools we have full documentation for in our PractiTest help pages. So if you're looking for particular options and how-tos with regard to any of these tools, you'll find them in PractiTest in our help pages. So for example, over here, we've got our Firecracker help page over here. We've got our API help page over here with some worked examples as well of how to build a flow within the API. And then, of course, we've got our full API documentation, which is completely free to use and to observe. You don't even need to be in PractiTest to have a look. So if you're looking at PractiTest as a possible option, you can go through the documentation, work out the options from here, and all of this you can do without being PractiTest users, and then you can take out a trial afterwards and use your trial to build up your automation and do a POC with trials as well. So we have plenty of options available here. So let's just go back for a moment to the slides and move on to our next slide, which is to talk about choosing the right options for you. And you may have already, just from the brief description which I've given say, well, this tool's for me, this one's not for me, but let's go through them one at a time and do a little demo of each one to be able to see what options are available using the various tools that PractiTest can automate using. So let's talk about the first one. And the first one is, the first option is to talk about, do you want codeless or coded options for automation? If you're an automation engineer who is very adept at using APIs and building up scripts to be able to use the APIs with, then probably the API will be the direction for you to go in. If, however, you're somebody who hates scripting and feels uncomfortable with it, then our Firecracker could be the direction for you to go. And so one of the primary decisions will be made based on whether you're happy to do coded automation or whether you want to do something which is codeless. And so let's talk about, first of all, the API, which is coded insertion. Its obvious advantages are that, firstly, it's fully customizable. You can do whatever request that you want. You can reproduce exactly what you want with your automation and bring that directly into PractiTest. You can customize all of your parameters. So if you have custom fields that you want to bring in, you can do that more or less at will without being limited. With Firecracker, you can also bring in custom fields as well, but there isn't so much customization available as there is with the API. And the other thing about working with the API is that you may start doing it with automation, but you could discover that, wow, there are other things I could do with the API as well. And as you start working with it and seeing all the options for calls which you can make with it, you might say, well, I've got this piece of software that I could integrate with PractiTest, and I could send information backwards and forwards between PractiTest and it and sync information. We don't have an integration for it, but I can build my own integration. And so working in the API not only allows you to manage your automation, which is today's subject, but it also gives you an idea into the breadth of the power of the API that you might want to use it for many other things as well. And so you could sort of send information backwards and forwards between PractiTest using the API. The disadvantages, on the other hand, of using the API are, honestly, it takes time and skill. Even a skilled automation engineer with API experience, it's not going to be zero time. You're not going to sort of say, well, I've got 20 minutes, let's go and set up the automation and get it going. It does take some time. And our API is very standard and well liked by the people who use it. But nevertheless, it does take some time. And also, of course, if you're building up loads of test cases or changing things, then that's going to require overheads and time as well. So you need the experience and the time to be able to use the API. And secondly, it's less flexible to change than using, for example, Firecracker. So if you need to make changes to your tests, and your tests are very dynamic and changing all the time, you may say, well, if I've got to reprogram my tests and reintegrate them each time, then it's not worth doing it via the API. So for a suite which you're going to use many times over months or years, yes, then that's something which can be done with the API and it's probably sensible to do with it. But if it's something which you're only going to do a few times, then you may say, well, I don't want to invest the time to be able to create that particular sort of API set of calls and then integrate using the API for that particular test suite that I need to do. And so you can use these different systems in a hybrid method. You may say that my long-term tests, I'm going to integrate with the API because I want the extra flexibility and all the power that it can give me. But for something which I'm only going to use a few times, then I'll use Firecracker for that. And the advantages of Firecracker is it's very fast to set up. You probably could set up the beginning of a Firecracker run in 20 minutes. It's easy to maintain so that once it gets going, you can then build an automation that just takes the XML files, puts them in the correct folder, executes the script, and then dumps the XML file afterwards, waiting for the next one to arrive. And you need very low coding skills, if any at all, to be able to use Firecracker. The disadvantages, on the other hand, are that you need to have the correct format of XML. So it needs to be a surefire XML file. And it is, of course, less customizable than something using the API. There are customizations which you can do with it, and we'll go through that, and we'll have a look at the configuration page where you set up the XML configuration to build your automation for Firecracker as well. Are there any questions up to this point? No? Okay, so let's move in to talk a little bit about the two actual methods and do a bit of a demonstration of them. So I have to admit straight off, I am not a coder, I'm not a developer. And API calls, programming scares me, but I can take some calls and put them into Postman and hit the execution button for it for the API. And so that's what we're going to do now. So let's just take a look at the sort of flow that you can do before we go into that. So let's take a look. We've done a worked example with Selenium. And so we've got here that you get your authentication token from PractiTest. That's the first thing you need to do. You go into the account settings and you either create a global or a personal authentication token. You also need the project ID and the author ID. And then you can create a test from the API. So you use the API to use tests. We go into tests, and here we can go create a test. So here's the call to create a test. You've got all the parameters and options which you have here. You need to have a name for the test. That is compulsory. And then after that, you can put in the user ID or use PAT, so you wouldn't need the user ID, test description, and then you've got your various attributes that you can put in, and that builds your test case. You hit the send button, and then it creates your test case within PractiTest. The next stage that you need to do once you've done that is you need to create a test set, and we have a call for that in the API as well. So you could also create a test set over here. So if we go down to test sets, you can see you've got create a test set option here. You've got to give it a name again. And then once you've done that, what you could do is you could move on to create your instances, which means associating test cases and test sets. So what you've returned in your test cases, you can take those IDs, and then what you can do is you can create an instance within the test set. And the instance is what you actually execute and you create your runs on. So here you create your instance, you take your test ID, which is been returned from when you created the test. You then other way around. So you do your set ID and your test ID over here. So you use your test set ID, which you returned when you created the test set, and you take your test ID when you created the test, and you merge those together, put whichever ones you want into that, and then you can create your instances, and you can create up to 10 to 20 instances in one go using a single request. So that takes you to the stage of everything being ready to execute. And then the final stage is you create a run. So what you do is when your execution in your your robot framework produces a run and it creates a result, what you do is you then create a call to go and put that result into PractiTest. And you can do that using create a run over here. You take your instance ID, which was returned by your creation of the instance, and then you need to give it an exit code of 0 for a pass, otherwise failed. And then you can put in other attributes as well. And this is where it gets really neat, because usually in automation, you don't have steps like you have in the same way for manual testing. You have assertions. And so when something passes, you don't need to say anything at all. You might want to add an evidence or something like that it's passed. So you can do that by adding attachments. But if you don't need that, you see you've got your files over here. You can add your file over here as a proof. But if it fails, for example, and you don't want to do that, but you just want to give the stage at which it failed, then what you can do is you can override the steps. And so what you can do then is you just take any step and you just create a step in the run, and that will be the step at which it fails, and it will give you information about the failure. Okay, we have a question. It's from Fernando. Let me just promote you, Fernando, when I find you. There we go. Okay. Hi, Fernando.
Hi, how are
Yeah.
you? I have a quick question related to this automation. Do you have a complete project where we can kind of use as a template with the whole thing running 100%?
We don't actually have an automation template project, but what we do have is we have a worked example over here with a YouTube video to show you how to set it up. It's
Okay.
a Selenium based on C#, but obviously the code would be different if you're using different automation frameworks and different code. But it would give you the framework at least, and it should be intelligible to be able to write your code in other frameworks as well.
Okay, that's very nice. Actually, I'm doing this Selenium automation testing,
All right.
but it's
Okay.
outside of PractiTest. And one of the pain points right now is that I can execute the test is
Right.
good. Does give us a lot of time. But the problem is that when I run my reports and see what's going on and do a retrospective during the regression test and all that stuff, I
Right.
cannot see the whole process and how many issues we get and how many issues we run or how many tests we did, because this is a separate part. So now integrating with PractiTest, I think now I
Right.
can have better information, better
Right, yes.
reports.
This is exactly the use case that the whole system was created for. That if you can bring your results into PractiTest, then using that, you'll be able to create your reports, because we differentiate between automated and manual tests. So you just create a filter to say, I want to see my automated test, and you can just spit out a report. You can say maybe last run was in the last 3 days or something like that. So you can do it, and you can automate your report to run every day or once a week or something like that. And then it will just produce a report, send it to your email to inform you. You just download the report, and then you can go through the report. And you can also set other parameters. Supposing you don't want to see all the ones which passed, you can say you only want to see the ones which failed. So you can filter out all the passes and just show the failed ones. And then once you've got the Excel in front of you, you can you may have, let's say, 50 which fail, and you can just scan through them and see very quickly, oh, these are flaky, these are ones which are for another department to fix, send them off to the other department, and these 3 are ones which I actually need to work on and find and chase the developers and get them to fix it.
Awesome. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's good news.
So if you're using Selenium, then this might be just the video to have a look at. This is the link over here. If you go to the help pages, practitest.com/help, then you should be able to find automation integration. And in that page, there's information about the Selenium integration and how to build the code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so we've gone through the basic flow of creating using the API to create tests. Let's just show you very quickly a run in Postman over here. So I've got Postman over here. I've got my create run over here, and I've got my body over here of my request, which says type is instances. I just copied and pasted this, I'm afraid. Instance ID over here, then run duration. And I've got my steps with my data over here. This is step 1, description, etc. Status passed. And then what I could do then is and I've got my parameters, of course, my authorization, which is my username plus my API token. And then all I have to do is hit the send button, and hopefully it's now created me my run over here. So if I get my project and instance ID, it's 10579. Let's go over to PractiTest. And what I could do is I can have a look by last modified. August, no, that's not here. Okay, so I'm going to look for my automation test. Here we go. Here are my automation tests. Do I have any which have been run today? See which one it is. I'm going to create a filter for this. Filter. Let's go into test sets and runs. I've got quite a lot of test sets here, and it's all junk because I just use it for filters, new filter. Let's show you how to find it. Last run now. Okay, and I'm going to do add a criteria. I'm going to say last run is in the last 10 minutes. There we go. Create filter. And here we go, automation API. Go to my instances. Showing us failed. Here we go. Let's go and have a look. Test created by API. And here we go. This is it. This is the run which I just did. And you can see that it has failed over here. So if I go through the open it up, you can see I've got my steps over here. Step 1 passed, step 2 failed. And so that's how you put the results in. You can organize them. You can see that we've got various fields here. You could put in run fields in here as well. And if we go and we look at the instance over here, you can see that the tester is set as automated because it's an automated run type API, status failed, and then we've got our fields over here as well. So we've got all of our information that we need over here. So that's the principle that gets you to your automated results using the API. Any other questions before we move on to talk about Firecracker and XMLs? Okay. So let's go on and talk a little bit about Firecracker. So Firecracker is an XML parser. And to use Firecracker, we need to do a few things. We first of all need to have 3 files in a specific folder on our machines. So we have the Firecracker jar file, which is the executable. We need to have a JSON file, which is a configuration file for Firecracker, which we create using the Firecracker UI. And thirdly, we need our XML files. So let's just start and have a look at how to create a configuration file. So we start off with the configuration file over here, and we can access our configuration page here. So I'm going to go to, I'm logged in already. Here we go. I need to upload a file to be able to start. So I take a sample XML file. There we go. Click open it. And once I've opened it, then it shows me my configuration information. So here it shows me a parsed test case, the way it's pulled it out. And I can see that I've got my test registrations, class names, PT name combined, PT test, etc. going across here. It's based on, as I said, Surefire format. You can also either group your test cases or have multi-test sets over here as well. So you can have them in separate test sets or single test cases per step and have them sorted out. And then you need to put in your API token. Once you put in your API token over here, then it will allow you to select which project. It will use your API token to work out your account, and it will show the projects which you have access to, and then it will allow you to select your project. You can also put in a test set name here to create a test set by name choose the name that you want to create. And then we've got PractiTest fields and XML fields. So we've got all of our XML fields over here, and you can select them and put them into PractiTest fields over here as well. And finally, once you've done that, then you download the configuration. And when you hit the download button, it will create a config file for you, which you then go and put into your folder. And over here, where is it? Desktop, yeah, it's over here. If I go to Firecracker somewhere, hopefully I've got, there we go. If I go into my Firecracker folder over here, you'll see that I've got an XML reports folder. This is the correct format. So you have your XML reports folder, and then inside it, you have your XML, and it needs to be one XML file at a time in here. So you could build an automation which dumps the XML file into here when it's time to execute. When it detects it's in there, it executes the jar, and then at the end of it, it will then clear it out and wait for the next one to arrive. So then once I've got that, I've got also my other two files which we talked about. So we've got our config file over here, which was the one which we downloaded. And also we've got a standalone jar executor. So that's the correct format that we need to have. Then all I need to do is I need to have bring up a command prompt. This the one for this particular use. No, that's the other one. 1 second. Let's bring up the command prompt and bring it onto the screen over here. And all I have to do is and this is on the help page as well. It tells you the format of your command line. So you need to do jar, PractiTest standalone jar, reports path for the XML reports where it is. So you see I've got it desktop Firecracker XML reports, config path where the config file is over here, and then your author ID, create and populate test set. And when I hit that and hit enter over there, the general idea is that it will then execute my test and run it for me. Now, if we go to PractiTest, let's just wait for it to finish. Takes a few seconds. What it's doing is it's executing it. Let's just go back in PractiTest over here. And if I go to the project which it's in, which is my xBot project, you'll see that we've got some test cases in the test library. Here we are. These are the two test cases. It has completed. I can see it's already completed. So let's just show you there. Yes, it says it's done. And if we go back and have a look at it now in the test library, you'll see that we've got our that was the one which, oh, I've still got it before it said no run over there. So this was earlier. And then if I go into it now, you'll see that it's got its two cases. One has passed and one has failed. And if we go in and we look at the test, we can see the run. And within it, we've got our test steps over here. This is the one that failed. And there are the steps, assertion error message, etc. So you can see using the XML to create the run. If you want to see me do it again, let's just delete the instances. We'll create the instances because the XML can not only run, but it can also detect test cases and test sets and test instances as well. And at each stage, if it finds something which it doesn't expect in the XML file, it will create it for you in PractiTest. So let's just go back to the test set a moment and let's delete these two. Would never normally advise you to do this, but since it's a test project, let's do something dangerous. Let's live dangerously. Delete. Continue to delete. They've now gone. I've got nothing in this test set. Let's go back to the command prompt and let's execute. Oh, before we do, let's just show you the test library. The test cases still exist. I haven't deleted the test cases. They're now showing no run because and never run because there's no instance of them in the test suites. The test suite's empty and there's nothing for them to latch onto there. So if you look in here, it's empty. No run, no instances, empty. So let's go in here and let's execute it. And what it's going to do is it's going to look for test cases, it will find them. So it will skip that step. It will then look for the test set. It will find the test set. So it will also skip that step. But when it looks for the instances, it won't find any. So it will create those instances from the XML file, which it's got in the XML file, and then it will execute them. So let's go into our test set over here. Now it's empty. We just have to wait for it to create it, which should be a few seconds. Let's wait till it's finished. There we go, done. And now if I refresh the screen, there you go. You see the two instances have appeared and they have run successfully. You'll see that each one has a single run on it. If we now go and we run it again, let's pretend there's another XML. It's got this. This is the next build along, and we're going to run it again. This time, when we run it the second time, you'll see that you'll see a second run has appeared. Because it's the same file, obviously it's going to have the same results, but there might have been different results if you were using another XML file. So let's just wait and see what happens. There we go. And there's the second run. First one was at 2139, second one was at 2140. So you can see that the XML parser is working and it's virtually codeless. I can't code and I managed to just about get this working myself. So it's completely doable by anyone who isn't a coder, isn't a developer. What you might need a little bit of help is if you want to do an automation script to automate the process of bringing it in and then executing it, then that might need a little help from somebody who has a bit of development experience, whether it's with cron jobs or using Windows schedulers or something like that. So that is the process of using Firecracker. Any questions at this stage? Okay. Let's move on to our third method of orchestration then, which is using xBot. An xBot is a small client within PractiTest, which allows you to do automation execution. So let's just go over here for a moment and let's find automation integration over here. And let's go to the xBot page here. So we've got xBot internal automation framework. Again, like Firecracker, it has some files to download, has a file that you need to download, which is the xBot agent, and you need to set it up. This gives a little demonstration of how the commands go backwards and forwards for those who are of a particular ilk who like these sorts of things. We then have the process over here. So you copy and execute the xBot agent on a remote machine. You create tests of automation type xBot in your project and update them with relevant script details. You then create test sets for xBot tests and run them either immediately or later by scheduling them. So the instructions here about setting up the xBot agent. Here's the executable command which you need to take. And then you've got explanation of what it is, and over here down at the bottom the config and information about that, how to create xBot tests, etc. Script paths, client paths, result paths, etc. Defining the test results in your script. A pass test should again have the result of 0, pretty much standard. Failed test is anything but 0, and then each uploaded file will be saved as an attachment on the automation run. So you can upload up to 5 files into the system, which will be part of an automation run. So let's just go over to PractiTest again, and we'll have a look over here. Let me just get rid of the command prompt from there, and let's bring over the xBot command prompt. Now, what I've already done is I've already downloaded xBot over here and initiated it. So if we go to our account settings, you will see that xBot has now been initiated. Maybe it got bored of waiting for me because I did this several hours ago. Okay, it looks like it's got bored of waiting. Let's just start it again. Let's just get this. 1 second. Okay, let's do it on the other command prompt because that one was right. Just bring it back again as well. Okay, so let's okay, so cd dot dot cd xBot. Okay, I just need to bring up the correct script. Line to execute. There we go. Let's see. Okay, hopefully it's now working. Let's go back to here and refresh the screen. Why is it showing us offline? Interesting. Let's try and run something anyway in it. Let's go back to the test library and find my xBot demo test. Can I execute it? Let's have a look. So if I go to traceability, .1, let's try and run it now and see what happens. There we go. It is actually running. So you can see here we've got our data of the actions and our memory and CPU usage when running the test. And then if we look down, we can see that we've got, if we go back to the previous tab, you can see the actual result. So if we go back to the instance over here, you can see we've got a new run which took place over here at 21:45, which is my time now. And you can see that we've got our results over here. So this has now passed. And what I've done is I've created a couple of files which have appeared in my xBot folder. So if I go back up a level to find my xBot folder, here we go. You'll see that we've got results files. No, I didn't put them there. I put them somewhere else. I had them somewhere else. If I go to Windows C, and then I've got them in my xBot folder here. And there we go. I've got my 3 result files, 2009-23 at 21:45. There are my 3 result files. They're 3 text files, quite large text files, 16 megabytes of rubbish. And when my computer decides to respond, there we go. Just a sample line appended to create a big file. So that's the results. You can upload up to 5 results files. And once you've done that, then your results will appear in PractiTest in your folder. If we go back to the test library now and just look at the test which I created, then you can see that we've got in the automation info tab, which is only available for xBot, we've got our script path over here. We've got our results paths over here. Our client type is Windows, and the number of results files to upload as well that you can put in as well. But it's being overridden by the original, which actually told by the original piece of it, the original file, which was the executable file, which told it that it wanted to upload 3 files. So if we go here, we can have a look at the my script file. No, sorry, wrong machine. This is the wrong folder. If we go back to desktop and then go to xBot over here, there we go. Then this is the file which I was using. So if we open it up, no, that was the batch file I just ran accidentally. I meant to edit it. There we go. So this is what we're doing over here. So it's telling it to produce over here in cxBot results 1, etc. So this is where it produces the results files, and this is the information that I've got over here. Just a very simple executable script, just to be able to, which somebody gave me because I couldn't even write this. So this was given to me so that it can produce the results files and create the information there. So that's the use of xBot. Finally, just before we end, I've got to pay homage to some vegetables, some salads, I believe. So a brief look at pickled vegetables. Of course, that's BDD testing. And we are just beginning to implement BDD testing in PractiTest. And you'll see the odd mentions of it here and there in the system. So in Firecracker, in imports now, you can import with support for BDD testing as well. So if we go to project settings and we go to import and export and import test, you can see over here there's an option to support scenario fields for creating BDD tests. We're also putting into Firecracker the ability to import BDD testing as well. And as part of the actual execution of tests as well, we also have BDD testing. So if you create tests in PractiTest, let's go to the test library and then create a new test. You'll see there's an option here for BDD, and it supports not only scenarios, but also scenario outlines as well. So let's just put the test name in here, BDD test, save changes. Scenario field can't be empty. Whoops. Edit scenario field, given ABC. There we go. Okay. Is that good enough for you? Scenario field should start, give it ABC. No, it's not happy enough. It wants more stuff. Scenario field should start with scenario or scenario outline. Okay, fine. So you want to start with scenario. Okay. Scenario. Error. I am not writing. Oh, I can't spell. That's my problem. SCEN. Scenario. Okay, right. I've got to learn up my BDD testing, but you can see certainly that you can create scenarios and scenario outlines. The system will support scenario outlines to the extent that if you put in a table into the rich text field showing your different data points, what it will do is it will create separate result instances like parameters for each of your data points. So if you've got a data table there, then it will produce separate instances that you can run automatically. Those instances it will pull up separately for you. The BDD test. Let's see how you're meant to do it. So if we go over here, you can see here, I should have put a colon at the end of it, given when then. There we go. So that's what I should have done. And then if we look at scenario outlines over here, you see you can put in your little table over here, start, eat, left. Then what it will do is it will create different instances for each of the scenario outlines and each of the combinations. So it gives you the power to be able to manage the BDD testing completely through firstly manual testing, and now we're starting to implement it in automation as well. So Firecracker and API will both have support for BDD testing as well. Any questions? Please ask me a question, somebody. No questions at all? In that case, there's only one thing left for me to say, and that is thank you all for attending. I hope this has been helpful. Oh, hang on. Yes, Manik. Whoops.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear. We can hear you.
Okay. Thanks for the session. Basically, I want to ask, like, what are the provisions being provided within these PractiTest tools for, testing desktop applications?
Testing what?
Desktop applications, basically.
Desktop applications.
Yes.
So do you mean that if you're, it basically allows you to do anything which you're talking about manual testing or automated testing?
Basically, I'm talking about automation testing. Like, I want to automate the applications, like based on win forms. Basically, I am working on applications based on win forms. So I want to
Right.
automate those applications.
So if you're doing automated testing, then you have the options of using any automation framework. As I said at the beginning, we are not an automation execution framework principally. We have a small ability to do it through xBot. So if you want to do small executables, so if you can do your WinForm execution testing automation and produce executable files, which will then feed into it and make it happen, then you could use PractiTest for that. But otherwise, you'd be looking at using one of the regular automation frameworks and feeding the results into PractiTest, either using the XML system or using the API.
Okay, Anthony, and also one thing, like when you say small, like, are you saying that it is not, giving the full provisions of, a complete tool? Like if you are talking about the Selenium, like, is it not giving the full provisions? Like
We
you're
are
saying?
not we are definitely not, I'm putting on the record, we are not a competitor with something like Selenium or Jenkins or any of the other automation tools.
Okay.
We're not trying to compete with them.
Okay. So like if like if you get if we get out of some functionalities or some scope like we need in our automation, so is there any plugins or something like that if we can integrate within the PractiTest so that we can complete our functionality?
If you're using an automation tool, then if it can produce an XML surefire format, then we can parse it and bring the results into PractiTest.
Okay.
What I suggest, since you seem to be interested in trying to use PractiTest to do the automation itself, I suggest you have a look at the xBot documentation and see whether it would give you what you need.
Okay, sure, I will.
So if you go to the help pages and just look at the automation integration page and then / xBot, then that will take you to, and you can read through all the description about xBot to see whether it would give you enough power. For most people trying to do major automation, it won't, but then we have the other methods as well.
Okay. And also one thing, like, is it limited in scope in integrations with the CI/CD, or there are no limitations in that?
We actually have the ability, if you're talking about using something like TeamCity, we have orbs, which we have an orb for TeamCity, which can work with it. It's really up to your imagination. If you can imagine a situation where it will work, it can be made to work.
Okay, sure, yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Anthony, thanks.
No problem at all. Have a great rest of the day. And on that note, I think that I wish everyone a great rest of the day. Hope you all have, whether it's morning, evening, or night for you. If it's night for you, thank you for joining. If it's morning, afternoon, or evening, then I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I hope that this has been helpful to you.